The community was wide, large, and varied. I mean, you had people who just came in, they didn't give a shit who was teaching. They just wanted to say that they went to SoulCycle, did their 45 minutes of cardio, and went home. You had people who would only ride with me. You had people that only ride with Stacy. You had people that only ride with Janet. Then you had relationships that would form, and people wanted, to go out to dinner with the instructor. I mean, it was like any hero worship. Then you had the whole front desk situation, and, somebody going, don't worry, I'll get you in. We made it this monster, this beautiful fucking monster of a whole bunch of bikes in a dark room with a bunch of people that just wanted to feel better. And make no mistake, it was a magical time. But they're like anything. There's always, when you peek behind that curtain, Professor Oz, there's shit going on.
This is The Cult of Body and Soul, Episode 3, noon on Monday. In this episode, we're taking a peek behind the curtain of instructor auditions and the elusive training program. Plus, the cult of personality the brand thrives on and the chaos it can breed.
At the time, getting picked to be an instructor was this holy grail kind of a thing, right? They were very, very particular about who got into the training program. And if you got a spot in that training program, you were it. You were the shit.
Chris's performing career had ended, and he was now running a dance company. This was his first class.
And I was terrible at it. I was absolutely terrible at it. I kind of hated it, because here is this thing where the instructor looks so amazing and they're riding to the rhythm, and I'm a dancer and I'm I should be able to do this. Why can't I do this?
Dancers tend to be perfectionists, so he could not handle being bad at this one thing.
I went back, because I couldn't be bad at it. It wasn't an option. And to be honest with you, I would have panic attacks on my way to this train. I was I don't know that I can physically do this. I was used to pushing myself as a dancer, but again, I was not in dancing shape. It wasn't I was still performing. And I would literally have to talk myself into going to class, because I would start walking to the train and I'd be oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm going to die on that bike.
And he called me one day and he said, Julie Rice is looking for crazy people to ride the bike. And I said, who is Julie Rice? And he said, are you fucking kidding me, Hallie? She and Elizabeth Cutler own SoulCycle.
Unlike Chris, Hallie Becker was already a sought-after personality, having taught yoga in Manhattan, at festivals, and retreats around the world.
I go, what do they want me to do? Teach yoga at SoulCycle? He's like, no, Hallie, they want you to teach. I go, well, I can start teaching right now, but if I have to ride that fucking bike, there's just no way this is happening. And that's exactly how I felt. I didn't even make it through the training. They were all right, just go. Here, Tuesday, Thursday, 12:15 and 63rd. These are going to be your classes. Just go. I really did not ever complete the training.
While Hallie was fast-tracked, Chris had to will himself into performing the art of SoulCycle. He, of course, was eventually asked if he would like to audition. And so the auditions begin.
There was a lot of nervous energy in the room. I remember we had to do 3 songs. So we got up on the bike and they would just put the music on and we just had to go and teach. No direction, no nothing. I don't know, 30 seconds or a minute to teach through a song, and then they would switch the song and you'd have to switch your whole vibe immediately. You picked your own music. So I went in there with Gavin DeGraw, Pink, and Beyonce. It was kind of like a whiplash. It was fun. I think it was one of the most fun audition experiences I've ever had.
Well, the earth shattered beneath our feet when Janet left. So many of her tribe were, oh my God, where's she going? She's going to a place called SoulCycle in New York City, which we knew nothing about. Oh, but we would. We would.
This is Stevie Santangelo. She was a master instructor at SoulCycle for 8 years, from 2012 to 2020. Stevie was my gateway to a lot of SoulCycle lore. It was through Stevie that I first learned the name Janet Fitzgerald. See, Stevie worked for Janet at Body and Soul back in LA. I introduced myself after a few weeks, and she asked me to dinner after class, just the two of us. I quickly got her backstory that she had moved to New York for SoulCycle after 20 years in Los Angeles. She actually wasn't a fitness instructor at all, but a professional chef with a passion for spin. For her 40th birthday, they offered her a job at Body and Soul, which would alter the trajectory of her entire career.
I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to teach these classes? And she gave me the single best piece of advice I've ever gotten, which is teach it the way you want to take it. Don't cater something to them. Do the thing that you really want. Play the music that you really believe in, because if you love it, they love it.
Stevie witnessed how SoulCycle West Hollywood put all of the boutique spin studios out of business. So it wasn't a surprise that Janet was in LA with Julie Rice scouting for talent.
I also had in my head, I'm good. I've got a great career. I have a house. I didn't want for anything, but in the back of my head, I'm like, God, this is so good. I don't know if I could do that. I'm like, I really didn't know if I could do that, because that is a hell of a lot of physicality 6 days a week, and to knock it out of the park every single time. And it scared me the right way. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can. And then they started to say this stuff that really perked my ears up. SoulCycle is a really great place to work. You'll be insured. You'll have a 401k. You'll be taken care of. You're being hired for your talent. And I was like, you know what? After being an indie contractor for this many years, it is tiring. And I have no intention to purchase my own studio and have a triple net lease and deal with insurance and deal with employees and blah, 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 blah. None of it. I don't want that overhead responsibility, but I definitely want to do what I want to do, how I want to do it. So I auditioned along with a bunch of other people. It was nerve-wracking because my favorite instructors from LA were there, along with Janet, which is always a terrifying prospect if you're a new instructor.
Because auditions can happen over several weeks, people had to wait to find out if they were accepted into the training program.
All of us sat on our hands until the 4th of July. Nobody, not one instructor, not one leaked out any information as to whether we got it or not. And now at the time, that was the top of the bar to work at SoulCycle. It was the top of the fitness bar for numerous reasons, and we can get into that later. But to get a nod was like getting a nod from the academy. And for the first time in a long time, I was nervous. I'm like, oh my God, what if I don't get it? I was like, I'll be okay. But I was like, I really wanted this. And so on the 4th of July, through a letter and an email, congratulations, I still have the letter at home. You've been welcomed into the program, and pretty much you leave in a month. We leave in a month.
But then it's kind of like, you're kind of waiting for your life to start at that point, right? You're kind of like, you're so excited about this thing that you just accomplished that I think from my audition, only two, like of those like 30 something people that were in the room, I think only 2 of us were accepted into the training at that point. And they were also scouted people. Like one of the people that was in my training group, Janet was like, he was Janet's waiter. And Janet was like, do you want to be a SoulCycle instructor? Like come to this audition. Like she just like plucked him out of the restaurant.
The training program was now somewhat codified. It took place between 8 and 12 weeks, 3 days a week. It was a mix of lectures, drills, and you were expected to ride frequently.
We had to really work to go to training. We had to work to stay in training, practice choreography, practice riding on the beat, practice riding on your opposite leg, which is we try to ride on the left, not the right. We were encouraged to make it personal, but not have a yard sale of emotion. We had to practice saying things as we were riding to be able to ride fast and hard and do all that and be able to articulate something is difficult. So we practice that. We practice, what if there's somebody in row whatever who's doing their own thing? How do you reel that in? And Janet's great at that. When to leave you guys alone. When to leave you guys alone. And there's a point where you ride, you do all these different textured movements, but when to not talk. Wait, why am I talking? Wait, why am I talking? Because you want to give people room to arrive at themselves. I make sure you have the quiet time.
A lot of the way that we were taught how to maintain control over the room was to be really specific with what we were saying, how we were speaking, the language that we were using. There's this idea that it's just like going up on a bike, being cute, like doing the workout and like spouting off mantras. And that's not what it is.
They taught us how to do that, how to create space. We do not manage or manipulate. We give you a space where you can ask all of the questions.
And it's not just about cueing in and out of choreography. It's also about the tone that you're setting. It's about helping them create a purpose and an intention for themselves in the room. So I think when we're taught to kind of be that discerning about the way that we're leading, that's what fosters that ability to be able to have control over the room.
And none of us are therapists. In fact, a lot were ex-attorneys. But having that plain speak was key. And we kept getting groomed. It was a terrible word. We kept getting encouraged how to access more and more of that language, to speak more and more of that truth, and to give you more and more space.
There's many layers to why someone became obsessed with someone at SoulCycle. Many, many layers. But it's very powerful when someone can see you. And I made sure that the instructors were trained in a thoughtful, mindful way to make sure that everyone in that room felt seen and part of something.
And then we would have other different kinds of workshops. Like we had to do a CPR class, like branding and hospitality, which was like super cool to be enmeshed in the culture of it, like how it all started. Some of the other top instructors would come in to give us workshops, like Lori Cole. I remember we did like mic training, but then it also like turned into her taking pictures of like all the supplements that she was taking.
Unlike fellow studios like Barry's Boot Camp or boxing gyms, SoulCycle does not require their instructors to be certified in personal training or group fitness. So you could have an entire career at SoulCycle and still not be qualified to take on personal training clients or teach at a competing studio. So the degree to which your soul instructor knows about human anatomy, physiology, and exercise science is pretty unclear.
I think a big part of SoulCycle and the training program was if they liked you, you were going to make it. They liked me. The company liked me. And I think that's a big piece of the training, because if they don't like you, it's going to be ugly. Your career is going to be tough. Yeah, there was definitely favoritism and pecking order. And again, it's because we made giant celebrities out of these regular people riding a fucking bike.
Yeah. So the riders are either going to want to be you or fuck you was essentially the message that we got in training.
What we do on the bikes is very sexual. It just is. It feels erotic. You moving your body in the music, the sweat and the candlelight.
What we now know as a parasocial relationship that we're having with all of these people on the internet. It wasn't like, make sure you're like seducing your riders. Like, it wasn't coming across that way. It was more about understand your position in this room.
A lot of people were sexually attracted to their instructor. You know, so like I used to tell them, like, everyone stay grounded. They either want to be you or do you. Okay. And you can ride that line in between.
I was working on a screenplay to describe my life at SoulCycle. Looking back, there was a lot of Coyote Ugly energy of like appear available, but never be available.
So they were being exposed to what felt like these mini concerts, these mini experiences. Of course, they're like obsessed with them.
You know, the lights were dark, the music was loud, the energy was high. When you do find that and it hits, it is like you're flying.
And there was really this expectation that we were, you know, turning ourselves into these like athletes who could do this job. And it's a very demanding job. I think that, you know, the breaking down just kind of happened as a result of the schedule that we were keeping. I never really found that they were in our faces trying to like break us.
What I think was lacking in that program, which is always what's lacking because it can't be taught, is finding your authentic voice. And you find your authentic voice through your stories and your background. I think that through your stories and your background, you become the teacher that you were meant to be. And I think that SoulCycle, Janet was sort of bad cop, good cop. Janet would be really, really hard on you, and Melanie would soften it.
They wanted us to like kind of cut the bullshit. Like they would call it like dipped in soul, like someone who had just been like such a fanatic and like had found their person and like was sort of like a carbon copy of the person that they aspired to be. And so I think there is a level that like we needed to be broken of habit. We needed to be broken of our idea of what we thought this thing was so that we could actually do what it really is. And it's not this frivolous thing that we're doing that we can just like look cute on the bike.
Dipped in soul.
Dipped in soul.
When I say dipped in soul, we don't want an instructor dipped in soul, meaning like, I don't want to take the voice that you've been using at Barry's, Orange Theory, your yoga class, just like anywhere else you've taught. I don't want you bringing that instructor voice into SoulCycle, slapping the method on top.
Without saying it, I think there's the side of, well, you have to look good on the bike.
Drew was with the company for 8 years, starting at the front desk and later an instructor.
Even broader than sexuality, it's about like what's attractive in a class, whether that's your availability, your vulnerability, your speech pattern, your body. There's a very gray area that I'm kind of comfortable with because I grew up doing like theater and musicals, and like you're playing with emotion, you're playing with experience.
What I was asking for was a giant ask. And so when they gave it, and then their room filled up, and then people became obsessed with them, I'm sure it was a lot of energy to handle.
There wasn't a lot of talk about how to deal with that kind of attention. There was a professionalism that was pushed on us about like our role in the room and how to be like in control of the room and command the room.
How do you build a community? How do you grow a like group of riders to get to know each other, to get to know you, to want to come back every week to take the same class from the same person?
We have a very specific role that wasn't necessarily about like seducing the rider so much as it was like creating an atmosphere and an environment for them to like feel really comfortable and relaxed and engaged in what we were doing and with us.
You know, a lot of us had stalkers. A lot of us had stalkers. There was one point where I was like talking to my doorman. I'm like, listen, under no circumstances anyone to be sent up to my apartment today. Like, we all had to go to HR a million times over to just like get people removed from our classes. I mean, like, people were obsessed.
In the beginning, they're very much like, just stay on the bike. Don't try to get on and off the bike. Like, just stay on the bike, teach from the bike. But as we start to get more comfortable with ourselves and with being in the space, there definitely is that encouragement to start connecting more, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to like connect with the riders that you can't really do from on that podium, right? You want to get on the level with them. You want to look them in the eyes. You want to seek people out.
They finally attempted to document the training program because they were hiring a lot of new instructors.
For the first time ever, I had to create a manual. Because before it was just like, I'm hanging out with these kids and I'm going to make sure that they're the best. But like, there was no formula to it. I mean, there was in my head, but like, not really, you know? And so we made a handbook and we had a training group in Tribeca and we gave one to each of the trainees. And that night, Julie Rice texted me and said, get all of those back and don't ever hand it out again. It just dawned on her. She was like, that she can't have that material out in the world. And really, our department trained the entire industry because if you didn't make it at SoulCycle, and a lot of them didn't, then they went on to teach at Cycle Bar and Flywheel and all the rest of them, or a gym or wherever. So we've touched and trained, I consider, most of the industry.
Once you complete the training program and perform several community rides, you are officially placed on the schedule. Getting people to place a $35 bet on an unknown entity is an impossible proposition, so the company would get creative by having them substitute extremely popular instructors' classes with the hope that people wouldn't cancel. They usually would. Chris was offered to debut his class on one of the most popular days of the year.
So my very first class on the schedule was December 31st of 2013, New Year's Eve. I got the assignment that my first class was going to be a New Year's Eve class. And watching that class fill up on the back end to the point where it was a completely sold out class was kind of mind blowing for me, that like my first class on the schedule was going to be like a completely packed room. Because at this point, you're not used to teaching to that many people. And so I just remember being so absolutely like nervous that I could throw up. Like when the energy in the room was just so high because it was like New Year's Eve. Like everyone was there to like get in their like last workout of the year. And it just felt so magical to be able to be like on the schedule for the first time in that way. Because I think I had an out of body experience just like being up there for the first time, where the reins have been handed over to you. Like up until that point, there's been somebody like watching you over your shoulder.
Yeah. So Monday at noon.
Noon on Monday?
I mean, Monday at noon, it's like,
What a rush. Noon on Monday. It was like bracing for war.
Noon on Monday is not a thing anywhere else. It never was before, and it never will be again.
noon on Monday is an expression that yields both panic and delight by folks. It's the time when classes for the week open for booking. Servers would crash, the site would freeze, people would freak out because the website could not handle the volume of traffic.
We had all the phones set up, ready to go. We had a fully staffed midday shift. So the midday shift is when there's no classes, just busy work, maintenance. And we'd have a full staff with the phones and emails and classes ready because classes would fill up. Wait lists would start. People would call to book their bikes.
You know, it's so funny. I remember when the Noon on Monday tank tops would sell out in 5 minutes. You couldn't even grab them. You could not get your hands on them. Noon on Monday. And you would, if you lived in certain parts of New York City and you ran in certain circles and you went out in that tank top, even like to a club, everyone would know what the fuck you're talking about.
The panic on Mondays at 12 o'clock was sort of insane. So when you talk about the cult creation, yeah, I wanted to take who I wanted to take. I wasn't taking just any Saturday 9:30 class. I was addicted to Lori. I was addicted to Stacy. I was addicted to Janet. And I think the instructors that can cultivate that, it's pretty genius when you think about it. I mean, again, it's their own business too, right? It is their own business. They are the celebrity. They're managing their own path. And some of them do it really well and some of them don't. So the ones that have done it really well are selling classes out. They're still on the schedule. They're still making it happen. I'm sure it's exhausting.
When you walk through the doors of SoulCycle, you are immediately greeted by the front desk staff.
Funny, flamboyant, cliquey, overworked, underpaid, gossipy. The front desk was the first moment of the rider's experience at SoulCycle. So to me, and it's an excellent question, the front desk personnel were also mostly actors, dancers, singers, future teachers, wannabe SoulCycle teachers. They were fabulous and magical, as magical, a lot of them, as those that were on the podium.
Front desk staff and studio managers interviewed for this project have chosen to remain anonymous.
We were obsessed. And then my friend ended up working the front desk and he was like, oh, I think they're hiring if you're looking for a job. And so I loved riding and I loved being there. And I was like, well, if I can ride for free, like obviously I'm going to work there. Just being in love with the culture of it, and the classes made me want to work there.
Once upon a time, you used to be able to call the studio, give them your information, and have the studio book you in. And people loved it, and they used it. Because it was a direct line to the front of the line.
What I saw more was just really wild entitlement from riders. We had specific riders that we knew that were an issue, and we would see their name on the list, to come into class. And it's all right, who's dealing with them today? And it was just being treated like we were not human beings sometimes. Truly, it was crazy. Just coming in being so, I'm always on this bike. Why am I not on this bike? I was moved. And it's you weren't moved. We literally didn't move you. It was always a thing. It was throwing things around the studio, yelling. And it was always why isn't this person being banned?
In late October 2012, Hurricane Sandy struck the East Coast. Over the course of 48 hours, wind, rain, and water left hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers without power and limited access to food, drinking water, and health care.
I have never seen such chaos uptown, west side, east side for people to try to get into classes. It was chaotic. You thought people were going to actually expire because they didn't have their fucking SoulCycle class. And there was such craziness to get into the classes. I had never seen anything like it.
All apartments and office buildings below 14th Street were left without electricity and power. The downtown epicenter of Tribeca was scrambling to reroute their classes uptown.
And on the flip side of that, I was doing charity classes with my yoga teacher community for Hurricane Sandy. So you had the 1% screaming because the Tribeca, so they didn't care what had happened to people. They just cared that they couldn't get into a SoulCycle class. And then you had the polar opposite coming together in yoga to raise funds and to bring quiet and community. And that was the most wild thing I'd ever seen in my life. People fighting to get in the doors and into classes because, God forbid, screw the disaster, I want bike 6. I mean, it was, I was like, you have got to be fucking kidding me, actually.
People who love spinning are often competitive, discerning, and successful, or at least have access to money. They also have very high standards. Perhaps why clients in Tribeca and the Upper East Side felt so entitled is because they were willing to throw money at the problem. For those willing to pay double the price of class, you would have access to the, quote, concierge department called Super Soul, which booked your classes up to 6 weeks in advance. Plus, you got priority status on waitlists and invitations to exclusive events. For somebody riding 4 times a week, this is costing well over $10,000 a year.
People that were part of the program where you would kind of have a dedicated team at corporate to help you book bikes early and things like that. And that also carried a lot of weight with people being like, well, I pay extra for this. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But that still doesn't give you the right to treat people like we're garbage.
I remember being in Calabasas at an opening and somebody came in and was like, can you park my Tesla? And I was like, I don't even know how to drive a Tesla because it was like kind of a new car at that time. I was like, I don't want to take that responsibility. We're a culture of yes at SoulCycle, which I've taken that into my other careers, like a culture of yes. But sometimes we would say yes to things that I would always tell my team. I'd be like, sometimes a no is the yes. Gotta find your no sometimes before you find your yes. And not everything can be a yes.
We had a genuine science to these classes where, especially these master instructors, they had their riders, right? The instructor knows where they like them. So some days, every Sunday ahead of Monday at noon, we would have our staff go through one instructor's class and hold all the front row bikes, which is not normal. It wasn't part of anyone's job description. It was specific to this one instructor, where we'd hold every single front row bike. This way that instructor could pick who rides in the front row.
Stevie can analyze the psychology of what your SoulCycle bike says about you.
Like, you can break down the SoulCycle classes. Row 1, you don't have to do anything. They're already in the front row. They're totally comfortable. They know their shit. Second row is the row of indecision. Like, they probably can go to the front row, but they'd really want to stay anonymous somehow. And then the back row is, I call it the smoking lounge of SoulCycle, because you've got really talented people. They know their shit. Sometimes they just want to be left alone. But they also, because the third row is elevated, they like to watch the entire room. They have the best seat in the house. And then to the right and left of the podium, the sidebar, honestly, they are the closest to me. They're also exhibitionists because they really want to be up there and seen.
Imagine you're in the SoulCycle app looking at a class Monday at noon. What we would do before that class opened up to the public, we'd go through and hold. There's no rider on the bike. It's just blocked. It's like when you look at the airline and you go to pick your seat and there's some seats that have X's on them and they tell you, there's no one sitting here, we're just holding this seat. We'd go through and block every single bike in the front row. This way the instructor could come in before class on Tuesday morning and pick who was going to ride in the front row based on how well they knew the rider or how strong of a rider that person was.
And I know a lot of people who said, Lori Cole, she's mean. No, she's not mean. She's trying to make you the best rider you can be. My husband used to take her and get tortured. And he'd be like, I just love when she tortures me, right? Because she's teaching you how to become a better rider.
I mean, listen, it was so dramatic at one point. You're working with divas who created the industry in the first place, right? Lori Cole, Stacey Griffith, they plucked everyone out of Los Angeles.
It was so incestuous and culty and wild and fabulous. It was every fucking color of the rainbow working there.
She wanted it to be exclusive. She wanted people to earn their way up to the front row. Whereas most instructors really don't care. If you want to be in the front row in your first class, it's not preferred, but do you, rock star, get up there.
The energy of each studio took on the vibration of the instructors and regulars. NoHo in the West Village felt chic and light and sounded like a mix of hip-hop and house music. The Upper East Side, West Side, and Tribeca were chaotically entitled and sounded like Hall & Oates meets Top 40. Williamsburg was the forgotten stepchild. And as for the Hamptons, well, that's another proposition altogether, which we'll get into next episode.
As NoHo was opening, the neighborhood was transitioning really at a breakneck pace. It was a little quiet at night, a little, what's out there at night. But on the sidewalks, prior to the studio opening, someone had spray painted yellow wheels that went from one place to the studio, then from the train to the studio. I don't know who could have painted those yellow wheels, but we're coming to town. And it didn't take very long because there were students and people in the neighborhood that did want a place to move. And let me tell you, if your studio is great, it is a direct result of your front desk and your manager and your ASM, a direct result.
So the very first time that I went to SoulCycle was late August of 2014. And I have to tell you, I was completely transfixed. And I had had a very colorful life up until that point, having worked in politics and government for 20 years. To say it was spiritual is perhaps overstating it, but it was close. It was close.
For me, Stevie is an eccentric, mystical creature who was always a bit unknowable. But she saw me. She understood and validated my intense craving for movement and adventure. She had the letters for more and less tattooed on her left and right fingers. To this day, I can visualize that writing on her hands as a way to self-regulate. She also introduced me to some of my closest friends you'll hear in this episode.
To be honest, I'd never seen anybody like her before. She was so unique and different from the world that I grew up in, the world that I was currently even living in New York City. She had dreads, she had a bunch of tats, she had these bright, bright green eyes. There was something about her that was really bewitching, and I just signed up and didn't really think too deeply about it. I just knew there was something special about her and I needed to know more.
Sumi and Amit are among the deep community I found through Stevie. While Amit first went to Soul with friends, it was actually Sumi's therapist who suggested she try it. Sumi had been struggling with compulsion and OCD related to body issues, and her therapist was an original 72nd Street rider.
So I think to understand any instructor in particular and Stevie in particular, we first need to lay out just a little bit of context about SoulCycle. I think everyone understands that it is a relatively elite thing. It has been out of reach for a lot of people. And what that means in our society is that SoulCycle is very, very white. And so as a person of color, as a queer person who was often sometimes the only person of color in some of the classes, but in many classes, one of just a very few. Now, there were a lot of instructors of color. The instructor roster was maybe more diverse than the actual writers. Stevie was someone unique. So obviously, as a person who is a person of color, who has had a very varied life, Stevie bridged all of these gaps, right? Also, she was older. She wasn't 25 or 30. You could tell that she had had a lot of life experience. She was willing to talk about that life experience. But when Stevie's magic was just right, you felt like you were walking into a room that was a little bit of a sanctuary. And that in taking care of yourself is the only way that you can sort of go out and deal with the world.
And I remember very, very distinctly sitting in the back row. And when she came out and she got on the pedestal and she got on the podium and she got on that bike and she commanded the room, every fiber in my body was paying attention to her. And it was not something I had ever experienced. And I wouldn't say that it was spiritual or sexual, but maybe it was something in between. So I think it was interesting to have that kind of reaction to a woman as a woman who is, fairly straight, all the things. But it was a button that got pushed in my brain, and I needed to keep pushing that button.
But I did get the impression that Stevie, in putting out energy, where she was basically telegraphing, I am here for you to access me, and in you accessing me, I am sort of quieting, or I am soothing a part of you that is vibrating anxiously for something. And I do think that that is something we all found in her, in our own unique ways. I think a lot of people who look at group fitness, especially SoulCycle from the outside, think of it as this quote-unquote cult, or have thought of it at times. I think that requires a little bit of unpacking, and some of that is a little bit unfair and lacking in nuance. But if you got hooked and you found the right instructors, right? So in my case, this is Rike. In my case, this is Akin. This is Stevie.
And when I left, it was next level. And I signed up immediately for the next class and the next class and the next class. Like, I just kept going.
The way she began the classes, the way she ended the classes, where the wheels were turning on the bikes. Everyone had clipped in and she was asking everyone to warm up, but there was no music. You could hear the soft spinning of the bikes, which itself creates an environment. She wanted everyone to know that we were going to do this together. And it was not rushed. It was not stressful. You knew she was going to push you, but she was trying to calm you down, immersing in the experience. Every time I walked out of her class, I felt like almost a new person. That rush. And so I wanted that. I wanted more and more and more of it.
It's a room of people who don't know each other's last names in the dark. We're on a bike. You're going nowhere, but we went everywhere. We went everywhere. I saw such emotional, physical, and spiritual landscape in every single class.
I always thought meditation was this sexy thing other people were able to do. But physically locking my phone away, walking into another room, and letting somebody take the wheel of my thoughts became a moving meditation.
Stevie definitely attracted riders who were on a search for something. And, she wanted to create a community of her own riders. And she invested in that. right?
She wanted a relationship with you.
Yes. She wanted a relationship with you. She remembered. If you told her something, she remembered it. It felt deeper than a surface level interaction.
But she also would like pick up on like all these like little nuances about like the class or her riders or just the overall like behavior of what was going on in the class. Like I very vividly remember being in West Village with her, and I was riding up for her on the podium.
John Stein is also in our Stevie clique. He's literally the top rider at Soul with over 6,000 classes taken.
And she's standing up on the podium next to me, and she sees a bunch of couples in the class. And again, this is like heyday SoulCycle 2015. Every class is sold out. Your instructor is the be-all, end-all for you. And she looks around and says, I see a lot of couples out here today, and I just want to put this out there. Decide who gets the SoulCycle instructor when you all break up. And I'm on the podium, and I like literally just start to laugh because you don't want to be in that room with the ex after you all break up if it's the same instructor.
Stevie was at the height of her powers on Monday nights at 8:30 p.m. Yeah, 8:30 at night. She was handed the shittiest time slot possible, and she transformed it into church. Stevie called it family night because it was the one class where you knew you would see the entire cast of characters. We would then have dinner together as a family at the iconic NoHo Eatery 5 Points on Great Jones Street.
Monday night at 8:30, that's rough. Like that's rough after like your first day of the week of work, right? Especially like in the winter, like 25, 30 degrees outside. Like you're getting home at 10 p.m. at night. And there were very rarely any open bikes in that entire class. It was sold out almost every single week, and you had people from every single walk of life there. So like myself, like standard working in business, you had lawyers there. You know they're up early the next morning. You had people working more in like real estate. You had more like the theatrical artist like community. Everybody was there, and that was mostly because of Stevie.
I always wondered if some of the incredible energy of the NoHo studio was within the walls. See, that location on 4th between Broadway and Lafayette was the former home of the legendary Tower Records store for 20 years. Just like Soul, Tower Records was another starting place for many creative spirits who needed a job.
I think what was really special about the Monday at 8:30 class was that it was family night. You know, that was what Stevie called it. And, you know, and if you were really in the inner family, you would get tapped to meet her afterwards and have a drink or have a snack.
No one wanted that spot. I wanted that spot because I would like to work out at 8:30 at night, and I cannot be the only nut who feels that way. And so I dug my heels in. It started with a few people, got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Sumi and I used to say it was the best happy hour in the city.
There definitely was a ritual about going to class and what happened after class, right? So it sort of started off in a smaller way on Monday nights where, you know, I will never forget the first time Stevie tapped me. She came up to me a couple of minutes before class and she tapped my hand. It was the first time she had physically touched me, and I remember it quite well. And she said, hey, are you available to come out and have a meal with us afterwards? You know, it's family night. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And I, you know, tried to play it cool. I definitely wasn't, but I thought, yeah, of course. It was one of those things when we walked in, you know, she was the lead rock star and we were her acolytes, and we were really a known entity. People saw us in the neighborhood. They knew we were wearing SoulCycle clothes. I mean, my brother called it the Manson family, which I didn't think was really the nicest way to reference it, but I know what he meant. And, you know, and she was a celebrity. People would like, you know, in the neighborhood, people would see her and wave at her. Or, you know, I would watch sometimes people surreptitiously taking pictures of her. I mean, you know, all sorts of crazy things. I think it just highlighted how special everything was. And I think she loved celebration, right? So when it came time to have a holiday like Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's, we were even doing that together.
We confuse because we have these people that we see all of the time. But the truth of the matter is they are there for themselves and you are there to support and teach them. And that is not friendship. That is client teacher. But you have to be available. Both sides have to be available, and also friendship, only equals can be friends. Only equals can be friends. If I am worshiping, Janet Fitzgerald and I cannot be friends.
It was like we were all kind of working in tandem, I think, for her and with her, and I think that's where the line started to get a little bit muddy. But I think the first time I realized that things were maybe like, gosh, what is happening here is when I did my year-end finances and I looked to see how much money I had spent on SoulCycle. And I will not share that number right here, but I will tell you that that number is somewhere between $6,000 and $9,000. It was something like that. I think it was $8,000. And I wasn't traveling with that money. I wasn't investing that money. I was spending that money to spend time with Stevie, and I felt that that was my number one priority.
We are in the service industry. Yeah, we are collecting money from you for you to feel good, to heal, to sweat, to surrender, to show up, to grow up. And, it's an honor to serve. And sometimes those barriers blur.
It was like when the cracks started to appear, right? And inevitably, the cracks are going to appear. And they appeared outside of the studio, not in the studio, right? Outside of the studio, things started to happen. There were inconsistencies, maybe. There were things that were happening that didn't add up. And I wasn't quite sure what was happening. And I knew that I wasn't getting the full story. But I also was nervous about my place in the group, and I didn't want to upset the apple cart. So I think I would just look the other way a lot. And I think that's also part of being in a cult, right? Is when you can't call it out. You're like, well, that doesn't seem right, but la 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 la. I want to keep doing this. I don't want to let it go. Or maybe it wasn't a cult. Maybe it was just a really bad relationship. And by the way, I never really drank cocktails until SoulCycle. I was a total wine drinker. That was all I ever drank. But Stevie didn't drink wine. She drank cocktails. So the next thing I knew, I learned how to make all the classic cocktails. I learned everything there was to know about Negronis and Manhattans and martinis. It was just not what I drank at all. And then all of a sudden, I was a cocktail queen. So it's so crazy. I know. It's so fucked up. It's like, look at all the therapy I've been in to figure this out,
Like two cherries in a pie, I know how to cling to you. Like two peas up in a pod, I know how to be near you. Oh, it's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature to love every little thing about you. Two cherries.
Cult of Body and Soul is created, executive produced, and narrated by Jess Rothschild. Sound design by Caitlin White. Theme song and original music composed by Elizabeth Ziff. Two Cherries by the band Betty.
How to fly with you. Oh, it's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature to love every little thing about you. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, want to know. Yeah, I want to feel. Yeah, I want to love. And don't you know I want to know. Yeah, I want to feel. like 2 cherries in a pie. I know how to cling to you, like 2 peas up in a pod. I know how to be near you. Oh, it's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature, baby, to want to know every little thing about you. It's my second nature to love, love every little thing about you. 2 cherries.
For even more Culty Soul content, definitely follow me on Instagram at JessXNYC.